I would just request everybody to please follow along. These are very simple this and that questions. If you would just follow what I communicate, you would be able to do it. So, if you believe the ultimate solution to a hot house is a massive 2-ton air conditioner, please stay seated. But if you believe a well paced window and a high ceiling can do the better job, please stand up. Okay, I see we have some natural ventilation fans in the house. Yes, I agree. Okay, next, you may take your seats. If you think we should be building with modern concrete and steel for everything, stay seated. If you're a fan of traditional mud, limestone, and stone, please stand up and give us a wave. The wave for the old ways. Okay, last. If you think climate proofing starts with better government rules, stay seated. But if you think it starts with empowering the homeowner, please stand up and stretch those arms for the upcoming session. Give us a good stretch. Thank you. Thank you. It does take a village and a few good policies. So let's dive into the details with our experts. I would like to welcome our moderator, Ms. Dharini, and our panelists to the dais. Mr. Anurag Bajpai, Director, Green Tree Global. Mr. Ashok B. Lal, Founder, Ashok B. Lal Architects. Mr. Atif Syed, Project Lead, Green and Resilient Buildings, IFC. And Ms. Sumedha Malviya, Program Head, Building Decarbonization, WRI, India. I would request all our guests to please take their seats on the stage. Thank you. Ms. Dharini, the stage is yours.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Vidyotma. Am I audible till the last? Am I audible towards the end? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so today we have a panel discussion on climate resilience in affordable housing. The objective for this panel discussion is to discuss barriers in incorporating climate resilience in affordable housing and also brainstorm certain recommendations. So for this, we have our panelists here. We have Professor Ashok Lal, who is committed to an architectural practice with 40 years of experience based on the principles of environmental sustainability and social responsibility. He is also a keen contributor to architectural education. Welcome, sir. We then have Sumedha Malviya, who's got 15 years of experience in climate and energy space. She leads national and subnational initiatives that are aimed at advancing building energy efficiency policies in India and also globally. She also leads WRI's India portfolio on heat resilience and sustainable cooling. Welcome, Sumedha. We then have Anurag Bajpai, who is the director of Green Tree Global. Green Tree works on policy advocacy, policy advisory, and sustainable design, energy training and research. Anurag brings about 18 years of core expertise in energy efficiency and climate change. He's worked on 1,000 projects across 9 countries and has served as a board member of IBIPSA India. Welcome, Anurag. We then have Atif Syed, who has 20 years of experience in sustainable construction. Atif has supported the development of mandatory green building codes for 7 national and local governments. His work directly involves direct engagement with housing finance companies for affordable housing and has also worked on the Building Resilience Index by the World Bank Group. Welcome, Atif. And I am Dharini Sridharan, Principal Research Associate with AEEE. And so I will now set the context on a study done by AEEE, following which we will have a 45-minute panel discussion and a short Q&A from the audience. And I request you all to keep your responses short so that we get to hear from all of you. So that's one good thing for you all. Now, I request the session coordinator to keep track of time. And do let me know when we have a 45-minute heads up. So, to set the context, AEEE recently worked on an affordable housing project. So, the objective was to incorporate climate resilience in affordable housing. In this particular project, we had field work done in 350 plus houses, and these were in the locations of peri-urban and rural areas. So, based on these, we came up with a set of barriers and we also came up with a set of recommendations. So, I'm going to first mention key barriers that were a result of this study, and depending on that, we'll have a set of questions. So, we had a couple of barriers. One, houses were found to be not sufficiently hazard proof. Two, national visions existed, but resilience and green criteria somewhere got dropped out when it came to state and regional levels. Number three was that beneficiaries receive little technical support on structural detailing, and inspections mainly focused on releasing fund based on milestones rather than based on performance. And the fourth one is that subsidy grant amounts were reported to be insufficient by the beneficiaries. Then lastly, we had mason training did not consistently include green and resilient aspects. So these were some barriers that we identified in the year-long study, which was funded by the World Bank. So I first start by understanding the panelists' lens. So could you briefly tell us one lesson that has fundamentally shaped your approach towards climate resilient buildings from the following lens? So first is climate resilient design strategies and housing delivery. So I want to hear this lens from Professor Lal. Institutional policy action for Sumedha and for Anurag. Supply chain market mechanisms and funding for Atif. So this is the lens that I want to hear from all of you. So I start with Anurag.
Thank you, Dharini, AEEE for this opportunity. I think you mentioned that I need to speak with respect to supply chain. I think this is something which is very critical component when we look at the single family or multi-family housing affordable. When we look at the specific challenge, I really feel that there are a lot of designs. Most of the cases, these designs, when we look at single family houses, they are fairly simple. Certainly when we look at multifamily, then certainly there are mechanisms, there are processes. Sir has also designed so many such projects. But when we look at the supply chain, I think the climate resiliency fails when the design is there, but the execution or the material availability is not there. Most of the cases, when we look at such material, let's say cool roof, insulation, or any such equipment which may create the comfort for the user, they are not there in the nearest store, hardware store or the nearby shop. I think that is where we see the supply chain as a major issue, in particularly in the implementation of the maybe single family houses.
Yes. Professor Lal, could you go next?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, actually making simple buildings climate resilient is a pretty simple system. Essentially, you need to make sure that your building envelope has got the elements. If you're talking about, keeping out of heat, it's got the elements to restrict the heat from coming into the building. And when it is pleasant, say in the evenings and in the mornings, it has to have systems which can allow the cool air to flush through the building and take out the heat that has been gathered during the day. It's really quite simple. And most people understand it, even when you go to the beneficiaries of these small homes or to people who are supervising them, etc. They understand this principle. So it means first, take care of the roof. Ensure that you have a light colored finish on the roof and you can reflect the heat of it. Give some mass to the roof so that it will take time for the heat to go through. And if you can afford it, add a layer of insulation. And that becomes more critical especially when you have high diurnal variations. Then make sure that the windows can be shaded from the outside so that when you don't want the sun coming in and heating up the house, you can cut it out. Whether it is permanent things or wooden shutters or screens, whichever way you want to do it, that can easily be done. In the walls, when you have seasons or locations with high diurnal variation, you need a bit more mass. So use 9-inch walls, avoid 4.5-inch walls, and certainly avoid 4.5-inch concrete walls. Absolutely avoid that. And depending on which way the wall is facing, you may want to add a small layer of insulation or change the building material so that the transfer of heat from the outside to the inside is reduced. And an important thing that we keep forgetting in many designs is that if you want to get the benefit of ventilation, which you can get for much of the year actually, you need the air to move across the house. Enter from one side, exit from the opposite side, or enter from below and exit at the top. So it's ventilators, cross ventilation, and sufficient openable window depending on the climate. When you have humid climates, you need more openable space. When you have, say, hot, dry, or composite climates, you need relatively less openable space. So these are just a few things. And, traditionally we managed to do it almost automatically, but somehow this is being forgotten progressively. And certainly when it comes to developers doing housing, it's totally forgotten. These principles are totally forgotten. That's it.
Thank you, sir. So if I sum up, is it correct to say that the order of interventions matter, and also that building envelope should be the top priority, starting with the roof? And for Anurag, if I sum up, maybe is it correct to say that the availability of materials in the supply chain has to primarily be as near as possible so that the market is enabled well? Okay, thanks. Atif?
So, good afternoon, everyone. So, if you look at finance, housing finance, just plain vanilla housing finance is already available. It's not as big a problem in India as it is in some other countries. But we're here talking about green housing finance. So, what is the purpose that this green housing or climate finance serves? What is the outcome we want? One is we want better homes. We want homes that are thermally more comfortable, homes that are operationally more efficient, homes that are more resilient to natural and climate disasters. So as long as it is meeting these three goals, we can say, yes, there is a purpose for it. But it's a catalyst. It's something that should drive the change. It's a way to transform the market. And it kind of supplements the already existing housing finance that is out there. And the purpose of climate finance is to offset any additional cost that there might be of making these houses more comfortable, efficient, and resilient. Now, the question is, what is that cost? What are the technologies that would make it more efficient, more resilient, and what is the cost of doing it? The perception is that these are very expensive changes. But as Professor Lal was pointing out, most of these changes, especially the passive changes, are not very costly. So we know from a lot of studies and data and actual implementation that the cost can sometimes be 1%, 2%, or sometimes even zero additional cost. So the way it is designed, the way it is implemented is important. Still, to change the behavior, to change the market, we need some kind of incentive, some push, and climate finance can do that. But the other concern is that climate finance is sort of limited. Climate finance, most people think, is free money or cheap money. In some cases it is, but it is not sustainable to have that for a very long time. So it should be utilized very smartly, strategically, to push the change. And then after that, like a catalyst in a reaction, it just starts a reaction. And then catalyst is not needed anymore. That's what climate finance should be doing. So there is enough climate finance available despite all the political issues that are happening globally to drive that change. We just need to use it more smartly.
Great. Thank you. But as a follow-up question, so do you think that current, say, MFIs and AHFCs are actually catering to that incremental cost that is actually required to make the house resilient? So whatever is the incremental cost, like for example, from our study, the incremental cost was found out to be roughly about 27 to 30,000 per house, which is required to make it a little more resilient, at least to a basic resilient level. So do you agree, or do you think that current AHFCs and MFIs are actually catering to this kind of a incremental cost?
Yeah, there are some FIs. In fact, all the MFIs that I am working with or am aware of have some sort of a climate finance facility available, including us, IFC. We have invested close to $3 billion in India over the last 10 years in green buildings across all kinds of buildings, and including about 200 million just in the cell-built housing space across India, in partnership with 8 housing finance companies. But again, coming back to the original point, I would say that our first attempt should be to convince the homeowner to actually put in a little more money, because if they see the value, they will do it. If for example, if they see more value in stone tiles or marble tiles, they will pay more and they will get the marble tiles for their housing. Can they do the same for putting in, let's say, a rainwater harvesting system or a solar panel or more efficient windows or ventilation system? So I feel that if they are convinced, they will do that. Plus, this external finance can also help subsequently.
Thank you. Thank you, Atif. Yes, Sumedha, can you go next?
Sure. Thanks, Harini, for the question, and a really insightful trying to understand the barriers on the ground, particularly on the incentive side and the financing part of it. So as WRI India, we have been studying the space of policy action on affordable housing for some time now, but over the last 3 years, under the Energy Transition Preparedness Initiative. One of the indicators that we look at is how have state affordable housing schemes and programs, and some of them may not have an affordable housing scheme, but they have a housing scheme which has components for EWS or LIG segment of the population. So we have been studying these housing programs and policies from the point of view of what intention is shown in these policies to address thermal comfort, to address energy efficiency considerations, and to also look at renewable energy adoption. So the indicator, the way it works is that we have these, 5 sub-indicators, and each of these indicators has sub-attributes and attributes under each of them. And so we track it from the intention. Okay, so once the state has an intention to do this, what does it do next? Does it do technical guidelines? Does it think about changing the procurement practices for affordable housing projects? Does it do training and capacity building? So those are the 3-4 things that we track. And finally, we look at things around enforcement of the mandate. That's so, for example, if Tamil Nadu has decided that their shelter fund will be used for financing affordable housing, which is thermally comfortable, what kind of compliance is being observed on the ground, is being achieved on the ground? Now, in that part, the data is very limited. There is hardly any public data from the state, I would say state participating affordable housing schemes and programs. And pretty much since PMAY rolled out, it has always been about numbers, how many numbers are coming up, and less about the fact that even though state intention is there, and we have studied 10 states, these are the 10 most energy intensive states, and barring Tamil Nadu to some extent, the remaining states, UP mentions things around in the latest, housing policy that, okay, it would be good if affordable housing constructed in the state is green, sustainable, but that's it. They just talk about the definition of what it would look, it looks good to have a policy like that. But at the same time, the kind of, efforts required in the scheme guidelines, allocating budgets and costs for meeting the, incremental costs that you spoke about. But not just for that, I mean, budgets are also needed for capacity building. Budgets are also needed for dissemination of the technical guidelines. Those costs are some things which we have learned working in practice with the Life Mission in Kerala, that those costs are usually not considered. It's assumed that we're only talking about the incremental cost for construction, but even if that is not there, what about the enforcement personnel? How are we going to, find their salaries? How are budgets being allocated for by the state nodal agencies for those kinds of interventions? So yes, we have quite a few insights around that. And one sort of observation that sort of plugging to what Atif was saying around financing, that's definitely a big area that is getting a lot of attention, especially in the work that we're doing in Kerala. And incidentally, a lot of the conversation has been around demo projects and doing pilots. And there, a lot of CSR funding is something sort of coming up to finance and show that this is the proof of how it will function on the ground.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So if I may sum up Atif's comment first, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. So the understanding is that maybe we try to say increase awareness among beneficiaries so that they are actually convinced that an incremental cost would lead to incremental benefit. And Sumedha, maybe if you could summarize this in one sentence or one lesson, how would you do it?
So I would summarize it that it's good to have an intention to incorporate these considerations, thermal comfort considerations in our policies and schemes, but a lot more needs to be done to translate it into practice. And we have studied those processes on how intention translates to practice.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So then we have another interesting question, which is, which emerging construction or material innovation have the greatest potential to make climate and heat resilience scalable, low cost, and rapidly deployable in India's affordable housing? So maybe one with a little bit of justification as to why you're selecting that. Professor Lal is staring at me. I know you can't select one, but you can try.
No, I would, I would give an order of priorities, right? I think since for small buildings, certainly it's the roof that counts the most, and the people who live under the roof are the greatest sufferers of heat. So any technology that improves the reflectivity of the surface of the roof and is a lasting material, light colored tiling, or now you get some better tiles that are available, is an interesting one, which also has very high emissivity. Apart from reflectivity, it has good emissivity. And it's almost as good as the paint that you can put, the reflective paint. And the advantage of this tile is that it lasts much better than the paint. The paint will not last more than 5 years, and it's much easier to keep clean than the paint. So I think that's a really good one that's come up. Now, interestingly, that can be combined with a bit of insulation. This is something that's being tried out right now. You take an AAC block and you stick this tile on top of it. And you just place the AAC block on your roof as if you're doing, paving outside on the street side. You just place it there. Because if you want to add another floor, you lift these AAC blocks and put them on top of the next roof. Fantastic advantage, very cheap, very easy to install, no high technology except for the production of this one material. Only one company is making it right now. We need to have many more companies making it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's for the roof. What about the wall? Wall is also AAC?
The response to how the wall should be depends on the climate a lot. It so much depends on design. If you do row housing, where only the front and the back of the house is exposed to the outside, and in between the successive houses, there's no exposure, it doesn't matter what you build the walls out of. It's the end wall, right, which may be exposed to direct solar radiation and can pick up heat. So the end houses need some protection. There, fairly good all-round solution actually is 200 mm thick AAC block wall. It gives you sufficient mass and good insulation. Paint it white on the outside and you're there for affordable housing.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, Anurag. Yeah, please.
So maybe I think I'll take an example. When we look at EWS affordable category, in one of the projects, what we have witnessed that in the location like Puri or Bhubaneswar, where the household has the asbestos sheet or max to max corrugated sheet. In such scenarios, we understand that thermal comfort is already at the compromised stage. And what we have understood from such scenarios, that you have the knowledge about maybe, I think, puff insulation, about maybe bubble wrap insulation which can be put under the corrugated sheet, or the puff insulation which is already inbuilt along with the corrugated sheet. They are already there as a solution available in those regions. But just because the mason or the person who is responsible for even designing and construction both, they are not aware. And sometimes we also realize that anything which goes beyond maybe, I think, 50 kilometer, not 50, maybe I think 20-25 kilometer away from the location, it is hard to achieve. It is not possible for someone who can maybe, I think, transport these to such maybe specific material and install them there. Because sometimes when you have a small quantity, like maybe I think 200 to 50 square feet, transportation sometimes itself is maybe, I think, equivalent to the material cost. Yeah.
So if I may, if supply chain is not a constraint, then which material do you think has the best potential? Let's say it's available regionally.
So I think we also need to think climate-wise. When we look at the coastal regions, maybe the cool roof or with the paint is not the solution, because it will wash away in just next 6 months to 1 year time. We need to look at maybe, I think, the more durable material, particularly, let's say, the maybe corrugated sheet which is already there, because they have to have a slant roof, not the straight roof in those regions, to avoid maybe the heavy rainfall. So we need to have such solutions which are important, and we need to categorize those materials also as per the climate conditions as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Atif?
I think Professor Lal already mentioned about reflective roof. I believe that's a fantastic technology, very low cost and easily applicable. Another option to that, which many of you might have seen in places like Mumbai, maybe not so much for climatic reasons, they have this kind of a cap on the building. It's like an additional secondary roof, which could be made out of lightweight materials. That does a lot of that protection from sun as well, and also provides a place for people to sit and socialize in without the sun harming them. So that almost like a cap and umbrella on top could be a great option as well.
Great, thank you, Atif. Sumedha?
Thanks. And yeah, just building on what other panelists have also spoken about, I think the context matters a lot here. So what we learned in the work in Kerala, where we actually worked towards developing these region-specific guidelines for thermal comfort, we noticed that each region had its unique set of materials that could provide it the comfort required. So in the case of, say, the northern part of Kerala, laterite blocks are more common. So should we just use laterite blocks versus AC blocks? Then simple things like ventilation through good windows, through good jalis, which are practices that they might have lost over the years. Those we found to be quite effective. On the roof part, yes, cool roofs, definitely. There are so many types of solutions now, cool tiles included. But even secondary roof structures, which provide some kind of a retrofitting element and might be cheaper to do versus doing a whole set of cool tiles, especially the kind of target segment that we're talking about, which is extremely cost conscious. So the way we went around looking at these solutions was to look at them at a square feet basis. How much is it going to cost on a square feet basis? And therefore we have prioritized interventions. And actually I have a sheet here. And some of the things around, even the wall side, we did discuss in the consultations that we did around lime plastering. Now lime plastering might be expensive, but it definitely offers a lot of gain as far as comfort is concerned. And on the roofs part, folks have already talked about it, but looking at, fly ash bricks, hollow clay blocks, again, depending upon the climate. So in coastal zones, certain things might work. In the AAC blocks might be applicable to all the zones, but maybe not in some of the high humidity zones. Fly ash bricks might be easier for the inland zones, and we have also discussed technologies like rat trap bonds and how they can be an alternative in all the zones. So various, interventions, I don't know whether they're emerging, they have been always there, but the knowledge of using them has been lost in the years.
Great. Thank you, Sumedha. So actually, while we talk about resilience, I think we do have a poll to understand what is the audience perspective on resilience. Can you bring up poll 1? Yeah, if you could scan this, we have a question on resilience. So the question is, what do you believe contributes most to structural resilience in affordable housing? So the options we have are better structural design and detailing, quality of construction and workmanship, choice of materials, stronger building code enforcement, and it is always context specific. Okay, great. So the highest bar is for better structural design and detailing. Okay, great. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next question, which is very specific to Professor Lal now. So what would it take to standardize a small set of practical and measurable indicators for climate resilient affordable housing?
Well, as Sumedha said, it takes taking the intention forward, right? I am a very, very strong votary of mandating what we now call the passive cooling strategies in the building envelope, in the building bylaws. Certainly for all housing, and you can do it for all buildings too. I think it is time that we stop talking about incentives and extra costs and this and that. We just say these are the things that must be provided, and buildings will get their building plan approval if they are provided adequately. And we now know, after having studied this, the ways you can put it into the building bylaws system, that this can be pretty much checked through IT systems. You don't need third-party certification. And it's simple enough. Keep it simple. I think that's what really has to be done immediately. We've been pussyfooting around this idea of mandating certain requirements. Voluntary hai, or फिर voluntary बना के, we make it so damn complicated, this green certification, that you need third-party certification people from all over the world to do it for you, and they charge you money, and you can apply it only to the biggest projects. What's the point of going that way? It's as simple as saying that the riser of the staircase cannot be more than 20 centimeters. All right? When you say something about the window and the shading and the insulation on the roof or thermal properties of the roof or the wall, it's very, very simple. So I think that's the best thing to do. Go for mandating as quickly as possible. And let me give you some good news. Tamil Nadu declared heat as an emergency. I mean, it's a political declaration. After having said that, they came to housing and housing for poor people, affordable housing. They realized that it is now their mandate to make sure that these homes can protect people from heat stress. How do you do it? So the United Nations Environment Programme went to them and said, look, you just mandate a few things. incorporate them in your practice. So whether you are a government agency providing or you just put it into the building bylaws. Now they are moving towards that already. Maybe it'll take a year or 9 months for it to be actually instituted, but they will be doing demo projects and they'll be incorporating this as a mandatory requirement in all governmental projects. So that's the way. Mandate immediately.
Okay. Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So we mandate and we keep it simple, and the important thing is to start. Okay. Great. So then we have the next question to Sumedha and Anurag. So in self-built affordable housing, construction decisions are typically shaped by what is locally available and what is familiar to the masons and what is perceived as low risk. So question to Sumedha. So how can we accelerate behavioral adoption of climate resilient construction among self-built households? And what approaches can actually shift their preferences towards long-term solutions that increase livability? Yeah. I'll then come to the question for Anurag.
Thanks for that. And very interesting, because a lot of what was discussed on this panel has been that we do assume that these solutions are out there and people should just, take it up. But what we have learned in our research, in the survey that we conducted across 300 households, and these are all so-called beneficiaries of the Life Mission, which is the government of Kerala's affordable housing mission, and largely I think 70-80% of their the scheme allocation is towards self-built affordable housing. We learned that heat is really not perceived as a problem by many of these communities. They are, of course, facing the impacts of heat. They acknowledge that it's a health issue for them, it's a health issue for the children, for the elderly people, and for the women, but they somehow feel that it will sort of go away on its own, and there's not much that they can do, because we are talking to, really vulnerable groups of people who are accessing these schemes and programs, who are basically struggling to, have anything which is of good quality. So we also try to understand from them what is their source of information when it comes to building these houses. And largely they said that most of the time they have no information. There is hardly any awareness. A few, say around 20%, said that most of this information they're getting from neighbors and friends who are in the same sort of income category. The type of very similar types of houses are getting constructed. So that is one area where we felt okay. So it's a word of mouth thing. At the same time, a small percentage said that we do talk to the local contractor. The local mason comes to us and tells us that this is what you can do, and we rely on them and we trust on what they are recommending. A very small percentage, and this is probably very unique to Kerala, that in the Life Mission they have something called design templates for affordable housing as well. And they said that, we go to a Life Mission office and there is a district officer who actually gives us some idea about what kind of templates we can use, and we take them and try to, take that. But it's a very small percentage. So the idea is, is around not just what the interventions on the behavior side are likely to be, but at what points in the interaction of these people they have to come in. So are we talking about the point of the point where the scheme is available? So is it the offices of these schemes where people go and file their applications? Should we have should we have some knowledge dissemination there? Should we think about how masons and contractors are trained to talk about these kinds of, technologies and solutions? Or should we have, a very local campaign for talking about the importance of these solutions? And again, calling them solutions in a very broad range of, the word, but simplifying the messaging, simplifying the dissemination process, but at the same time, trying to look at multiple channels through which people are getting this. And at this, also addressing the fact that currently heat is not an issue for them, and to show them this correlation that it's going to impact your health, and it's already impacting your health. Many of them reported that they are having, recurrent skin infections, recurrent, communicable diseases because of heat. But they really feel it's not because of heat, it's something else. So we have to also think about, the platforms we have for implementing some of these behavioral strategies as well.
Great. So basically simplification and motivation from neighbors. So that means the neighbors have to take it so that we can also take it. So that actually means awareness has to build, and that actually means that institutional capacity has to be increased. So it goes back. Okay, thank you. So the question for Anurag is that in the same context, what are the key bottlenecks that prevent the resilient construction products from reaching the households? It is there in the market, it's there in the supply chain, but it's just not reaching the beneficiaries.
Thank you, Dharini. I think it's a very important question, and it is also relating to the response by Professor Lal as well. We, based on maybe I think number of projects that we are doing, what we have also witnessed that most of these land allocations, they have been at the low elevation level. It means that the flood issue or the rain issues, they are very, very much higher on these self-built houses. Whenever there is a specific maybe heavy rains, the water goes first in those houses. In such challenges, I think the basic information in terms of the high plinth beam, which is missing, nobody talks about them. In terms of the seepage, because they only put up max to max, maybe I think 15 centimeter slab max, sometimes 12 centimeter slab also. So it means that when they put only such slab without any specific waterproofing coverage or any tiles above this, they'll always have the seepage in such scenarios when the rain is higher. And sir, that is also the reason I think this is such a complex sector where the rating agencies are not having enough penetration. I would say almost negligible. Because this sector is not easy. It is not paying sector to the rating agencies as well. Not even the 5,000, 10,000 for the rating agencies per unit. So it is not the sector specific, but it is, I think affordability is also the parameter. Now coming to your point, Dharini, in terms of bottleneck, I would say that the trust issue is the first point that comes to my mind. Sometimes they get to have this information. For example, when you see the burnt clay red brick, which is simple, 8 rupees per brick, whereas the fly ash brick is 7 rupees per brick. They would always go with the burnt clay brick because they do not have enough trust on the fly ash brick. I'm talking about the mason because mason is the decision maker there. Similarly, I think we also forget most of the times that there is a invisible value proposition is also missing in such scenarios. What I particularly means to say, there are a lot of examples. We have seen how the housing as a sector has shifted from burnt clay brick to fly ash bricks to AAC blocks, and now we talk about RCC wall. RCC wall construction is the maybe I think the premium sector now it is called, because they may charge maybe I think almost like 15 to 20,000 rupees per square feet if the home is constructed with RCC wall. But one thing that we have missed, that they have marketed it well. They always mention that these houses are Loha Lat houses, means they are almost equivalent to the iron. And that is also the reason that we need to also look at the value proposition which the sector is making when we look at maybe I think the AAC block in the self-built houses. Sir has mentioned some specific design interventions. Whether we are giving the right propositions or information to the end user, most of the cases we mention that this will be creating the thermal comfort. It has nothing to do with them. They most of the time they live and stay in 40-45 degrees Celsius. What is the thermal comfort that we talk about for them? Right? It is not something, I understand it is invariably an important aspect. But when you start talking to them, this is something that they are not able to correlate then and there. It is important that we need to have a right definition which needs to be propagated well for those sector. Otherwise, when we look at the heat resistance, these and specific material, I think we have to change the language and definitions as well. So that is maybe I think the second point. And the third is, I think most of us agree that the mason has to have enough knowledge. No, but there's nothing which is giving them the maybe the accreditation that they are the right mason, or maybe I think not good mason. Everybody is mason who is just maybe I think who is just with the mason for 1, 2, 3 years, then he becomes the mason. That's it. So I think these are the specific point that I wanted to make. Yeah.
Thank you. So that means I think there is an issue in familiarity and awareness of the materials, probably. And so again, that goes back to capacity building and awareness. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So then we have a question for Atif. So for low income households, even a small increase in upfront construction cost can be very prohibitive. And despite long-term benefits that they can accrue with the incremental cost. So this creates a persistent investment gap. So what kind of de-risking mechanisms could make climate resilient features more affordable for these households?
Yeah, I think that fear of incremental cost has been limiting a lot of the work. And while it is true in many cases that incremental cost can be very prohibitive and would not be affordable at all, but we wanted to actually try it out. So about 3 years ago, we had the opportunity to start a program with some housing finance companies who are financing self-built housing. So people who are building their own houses. And we said, let's try out with you how we can support your customers, these people who are building their own houses, build in a more sustainable manner and try to minimize the effort, minimize the cost, and yet have a much bigger impact. So we started, just like Sumita was saying, we started by understanding how people are building their own houses, what are their perceptions like. One interesting finding from that survey was when we asked them, would you be willing to pay a little bit more to build a green home? And we told them that green home requires these kind of technologies, and the positive or the people who said yes were like in 15%, 20% range. So not a whole lot of people showed interest. But when we communicated slightly differently, we said, would you be willing to invest in a house that has temperatures, comfortable temperatures, where your children are not forced to go outside and sit in the sun in peak summers when actually it's hotter inside, and when there is a power shortage, or when the water is not being provided by the municipal supply. During those times, if you still have sufficient water or electricity, would you be willing to invest a little bit more in that house? We need not call it a greenhouse, a green home, whatever. Would you like that? And more than 50% people said yes, we'll be willing to spend a little bit more. So it's the way you communicate also that makes a big difference. And I think we also need to avoid this this phenomena. I think we were discussing with my UNEP colleague Mani here, that we often tell low-income affordable housing people to do things that we don't do it in our own homes. So we have to avoid that. It's what I call the nano effect, where Nano was projected as a poor people's car and nobody bought it, because even low income didn't buy it because they were aspirational. So we, in this project, we started off first with this survey, and then we tried out different mechanisms and ways to help these individual homeowners make better homes. Firstly, we analyzed what kind of technologies were available in their localities at a reasonable cost, and sometimes at a lower cost, as Anurag was saying. What kind of skills were missing, and then we also put in a verification, a guidance system. So with these three things, with the right kind of technology measures, a list of things that they would do, some guidance to help them do that, and a verification system to ensure that they are actually doing it, so that could inform the financier who was putting that money in it. With that, we were able to convince numerous homeowners. About 50% or more of the applicants, once they were shown this, took that green home loan And now that program has taken off with 8 housing finance companies across India. And it's early days, but we've got about 1,200, 1,300 homes that have been certified and built green, and about 5,000 that are in the pipeline. So it can be done.
That's great. That's great. But is there a specific mechanism? Like there are many mechanisms that I understand, like blended finance, like interest buy downs. So what are some of these de-risking mechanisms that could actually help?
Yeah, I think typically when for a homeowner, for a self-built income homeowner, they're most concerned about these monthly payments. So if that can be impacted, yes, that would be the biggest driver. Or sometimes if they're looking for a bigger loan, relaxing that loan to value ratio might also be quite critical for them. But also I think whenever these incentives are shown, we should also be talking about the savings, potential savings that they can have, and talk in these holistic terms rather than just talking about the monthly installments that they have to fill.
Thanks, Otif. So we have one more poll question here. So can you bring out the second poll? Yeah. So if you could scan this. So the question here is, at what stage do you think that climate resilient strategies are most often lost or cut down in affordable housing projects? So I'm reading it out for the benefit of our panelists. So the first option is at the tendering and cost cutting stage. The second one is the during on-site execution. Third is at inspection and certification. Fourth is it was never explicitly considered, which is the highest right now. Okay. Right. So we are aligned, no comments on that. So before we go further, just we have one interesting poll, which is a food for thought. It's basically a set of recommendations. We can go to the next poll. It's basically a set of recommendations that is the result of our study. And I'm just going to read it out while you scan it. So the question is, how would you position the following recommendations for incorporating resilience in affordable housing in a matrix of impact versus effort? So you got to look at the recommendations that have been provided, mark it on a scale of 1 to 5 for impact and for effort, and then we look at the resulting matrix. So for the benefit of the panelists, the options or the recommendations, that we have are: define resilience and green criteria in operational guidelines and reflect them in trade training. That's the first recommendation. Second, we had outline requirements for technical support by state and local governments, including standardized construction methods and guidance through verifiers and expert pools. Third, we have facilitate scaling of housing microfinance models by partnering with AHFCs, cooperative banks, and MFIs. Fourth is to promote supply chain strategies like incentivization, bulk procurements, and establishing distribution channels. And the fifth one is enhance beneficiary awareness through community engagement. So we have all of the recommendations under high impact and high effort. Okay. Great. So thank you. That's just a food for thought. So I think we'll probably wrap it up with one rapid fire round question. And just a minute. It's a very interesting question, but it cannot be detailed because it is rapid fire. So what is one climate resilient feature you would insist every affordable home should have if budget is a constraint and if it is not a constraint? Very short one word answers. If it is a constraint and if it is not a constraint. Whoever wants to go first can.
It is not a constraint. Smart meters, so data on the building's operations.
If it is a constraint?
If it is a constraint, then reflective paints.
This is a rapid fire question. Come on, what is this?
I think if it is budget is not a constraint, then cool roof or tiles, ventilation, mechanical ventilation. If it is because these are maybe I think the very low or no budget escalated points. When we look at the budget, then certainly I think renewable energy is component. And the second is well structured construction practice. As I think we need to have maybe I think 10 pointer systems or 5 pointer systems, which may include what is required at the climate resilience point of view, in terms of your plinth level, your waterproofing, your ventilation, your maybe structure design, if it is possible, at least for the typical designs. So that is.
Well, this is maybe a little facetious, but this was a very old practice. When the budget is not a constraint, you go to a cooler place. You go to the hills, or you go to the sea, or you go on holiday, if budget is not a constraint. But if budget is a constraint, you certainly must insist on a ceiling fan and good ventilation. Because, you know, now we take it for granted, right? Ceiling fan. But just having the first thing you do when you're feeling hot is this, no? That's the first thing you do. And so we know that a ceiling fan is an essential component of a comfortable home, whether it is warm. And perhaps an exhaust fan in addition, because sometimes the air doesn't by itself, through natural ventilation, move sufficiently across the room. So do put that exhaust fan intelligently at one end of the house so that you can pull the cool air through the house. These are the two things I would insist on.
I think, yeah, I mean, the answer with respect to the non-budgetary constraints can be pretty long, actually. If you can do many things, if you don't have a budgetary constraint, you can do good walls, you can do good roofs, you can think about hiring a designer to do the best job as far as achieving a high performance building is concerned. But we also know that with the kind of housing that is constructed, it's in a very small space as well. So it's many of the interventions on, whether it's insulated walls or cavity walls, those things may not be feasible because people don't want to reduce the floor area available to them, and they would want to get the maximum as far as square footage is concerned. But yes, if budget is a constraint, definitely cool roofs, as much as insulation as you can get on the cool roofs, on the roofing side is definitely an intervention. And of course, low cost interventions or no cost interventions like basic vegetation, just having greenery around your house. Even we have found houses which don't even have that. So those things also can be instilled very quickly in people, which will not cost.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been really engaging. And so I would just like to summarize maybe 2-3 points at max. So one is to mandate, keep it simple, simplify, and just start. That's the first thing. Second is to increase awareness. And probably the best idea is to convince the beneficiaries so that they understand the importance of resilience and they actually understand the benefits of going resilient. And the third is that the priority of strategies should probably matter, starting with the roof and then walls. And I think the understanding of which passive strategies can go well with one another. That needs to be that has to be understood by the beneficiary. And the last one is to enhance capacity building and training, so that the masons and the rural workers are actually they're actually trained and empowered to do better construction. So with this thought, I will end the session. Thank you so much. This has been a very enriching experience. I'll hand it over to Vidyottama. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharini. While this has been an incredibly insightful session, but in the interest of respecting everyone's time and our upcoming speakers, we'll bring this conversation to an end. I would request all our speakers to please come in front of the stage for a group photograph. Thank you. For the next thematic session, I would hand over the mic to my colleague, Mr. Ritabruta Sen.